Yes, hi. Is Mr. Nielsen there?
This is he.
Mr. Nielsen, thank you very much for doing this for me. My name is Joe Krein.
All righty.
I've always been a very big fan, not just of Elvis, but of you. You have a beautiful voice, a God-given gift, I must say.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
I always loved the Softly As I Leave You.
Yeah, that was a very special song.
Was Elvis's favorite song from you, or?
Well, that was one of his favorite duets that we did. The story. Would you like to hear how that came about, or?
Please, sir.
We were backstage at the Hilton in his dressing room, and he was evidently, I think the singer John Gary had told him the story about that and Elvis was telling the story about that John had told him about the man who was dying. And I knew the song. I'd sung it in the past, but I loved the song. And I was sitting down, so I sat down at the piano and began to softly play it and sing it. And while I was doing that, he began to recite the words softly behind me as we did on stage. And his dad, Vernon, said, "Elvis, that's beautiful. I want you to do it on stage." Elvis said, "That's a good idea." Said, "Somebody go find Glenn D." So we had to run. They had sent a search party out to find Glenn and brought him backstage. And we kind of ran through it backstage, and we did it that night that night. And it got a tremendous reception. A unique situation there. The very first night we did it together, I was over in the corner out of the spotlight. They had just a spotlight on him. The next night he made sure that they had a spotlight on me also. That's just kind of the way he was.
Yeah, other people that I've talked to said that he, when somebody was like, say if it was Kathy, and Kathy was doing a solo, he didn't want the light on him. She was singing. It was her stage.
Yeah.
And that was good. You know, a lot of people wouldn't do that.
That's very true. I'll give you an example of that. I mean, I was with a group. Of course, I'm giving away a story that I'm also writing in my book.
Well, I won't. Then I won't use it. Don't worry.
I don't mind. It don't. You know, that's not going to sell or not sell it one way or the other. But I had a group together that we did an opening show in Tahoe for Jimmy Dean once, and we did a song, an old gospel song called "You Can't Be a Beacon If Your Light Don't Shine." And when we finished, we literally got a standing ovation. We were out there to sing back up and open the show. After that, he told them every night we usually open the show, but one of the boys had a cold tonight. They couldn't open. We were basically replaced by an elephant act.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
Oh, but that was the difference. And you know, he was just not insecure at all. He had no reason to be. Elvis didn't. He wasn't afraid of. And he wanted, if somebody was doing the show, he wanted to show them off. He was proud of his people. That was his attitude.
Well, everybody that was in his show was top-notch.
Well,
top-notch people.
It's handpicked by him.
Uh-huh.
And so he was proud of them. He would never thought, he'd never entered his mind that there was any competition there. He would just say, "Hey, I want y'all to hear what I found," basically what it was.
Could you tell me a little bit how I basically know, but because I was just talking actually to Larry Geller too. How did the voice come about? Was it used by her? Did Larry Geller it was first used as a magazine, or?
It was on the, we were sitting around and it was on I wish I still had the book. Somebody stole it or something, but it was a religious periodical. On the front of the book, it had the voice and it had some drawing, I forget what exactly, but yeah, it was a religious periodical that he had received from Larry Geller, and he liked the name Voice, and he took it from the cover of that magazine and decided, of course at that time he could have called us whatever, it'd been fine with me. Yeah. But he named the group, so that was unique. See, the thing that set this group apart from any other group was when he signed this, he immediately called his dad and said, "Dad, I finally got my own group," he called. And then he looked upon us as his group. It wasn't just, another group that had been hired. In fact, he used to call me up to his room, and I remember flying on the Leaf Marie. He called me back to the bedroom and asked me how all the boys doing. It was like it was his group, and that's how he looked at it.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit of how you started?
How I started?
Yeah.
Well, we organized the Imperials in 1963. I was a tenor all back in Montgomery, Alabama, was where I was born. But I was singing in high school and began to enjoy singing, and then Southern gospel was very popular in the South. And,
still is.
Yeah, it still is, very much so. And being a tenor, I was very much in demand because tenors are hard to find. And it was just something that came easily and naturally to me. I had done it. I've done a lot of things, but I found out it sure beat working in a car wash if I could figure out a way to make a living at it. My granddaddy used to tell me, he said, son, you either get yourself a regular job. You can't make a living singing.
Isn't that funny? Because Elvis's father said the same thing to Elvis. You can't make good money being a guitar player.
He never knew a guitar player was worth a damn.
That's right. That's weird.
You go get yourself a regular job, because he had worked so hard all his life, and he couldn't understand how anybody could actually make money singing or so forth, because he'd never. But so far, I've been lucky enough that I was able to do it.
Oh, that's great.
I just started as a kid, and when I was 18, I ended up with a group out in California called the Songfellas. And Jake was the one that recommended, Jake Hess. I was with the Statesman at the time. When I was only 15, I went down to Grand Ole Opry, and this guy, I had cut an album at a studio there that had I remember it had egg crates for sound, for sound, and I had a brand new little album out. It was like it was one color. The cover was yellow in my picture. But I had this album, and this guy took me down there and on a Waddy Fowler all night singing, and asked if they'd let me sing. And the guy who later went to work for us, by the name of Bob McCollum, said the reason he let me sing because I was dressed with a tux shirt and a tux coat, and he really liked the outfit I had on. So he put me on, and I sang and actually stopped the show, and they put me on at the radio part, and Tony Brown, who was head of MCA, also the piano player for a while, so he remembers a kid hearing me in his bedroom in Texas sing on that particular. It went out over WSM, just like the Grand Ole Opry, but it was a Friday night gospel sing, and I sang, and I stopped the show again in the radio part, and they had to retime the whole show because they only had so much time for each act. So Jake heard me, and he told us a group out in California about me, and then I went out there to California with a group called the Songfellas, and sang out there. And then when the dead Spear of the singing Spear family had a heart attack, and the Spears needed someone to sing with them that could give him a rest, so he would have to sing all the time. And Jake recommended me to the Spear family, knowing all the time that he was eventually going to organize the Imperials, which
of course
he had me in mind for at the time. So I went with the Spear family, was there for a year or so, and then we organized the Imperials back in 1963. And that, of course, later in, I guess it was in 64 that I met Elvis when we did the How Great Thou Art.
How was Elvis when you first met him? Can you kind of tell me the first time you met Elvis?
Yep. It's kind of burnt there in my memory. I remember that I was standing over in the corner, kind of trying to look like wallpaper, because I was somewhat intimidated by all the talent there. I'd never seen so much in one building, in the studio, Studio B in Nashville. And Elvis walked in the studio, and he was dressed in a Superfly outfit he purchased on Beale Street. He had on a black hat, black cape, solid black outfit, and I remember he began to look around. He said hello and kind of to everybody as he went by. He literally bypassed the big wheels who had come in from New York, basically to come into where the musicians were. He wanted to see. I think he identified with them more than he did the big wigs. But I was standing over there, and in wonder of wonders, he began to come over to where I was. And he walked up, stuck out his hand, and said, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley." And I almost giggled, because I thought, like I don't know who you are, especially dressed in that outfit. I mean, he looked great. It would look ridiculous on me, but he had that knack of whatever he wore looked like it was made for him, you know. And he stuck out his hand and said, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley. By the way, I just want you got all your records. I watched Wouldn't Miss Your TV show, and you're one of my favorite singers. And that was the one that topped it off, because when he said that, I stammered, almost looked around to see if he was talking to me, and basically said, well, thank you, sir. I didn't realize you even knew who I was.
Wow.
He said, no, I followed you, got all the records you've done. You're one of my favorite singers, and there's a song that you recorded that I want to record on this album. Do you mind sitting down here at the piano here with me just a little bit and run through and see if we got it right? And I sat down with him, and we ran through Where No One Stands Alone.
Oh, I love that song.
And sure enough, because anything he ever did, he wanted it to be done right. He'd sing it all night till he got it like it pleased him. But that was my first, that was an absolutely, he was just he had that kind of endearing quality, though, of making you feel like he was somebody special, not just another singer on the session.
Was he a nice man?
Very nice man, very kind, considerate. He was a Southern gentleman. There were times when he got upset, but don't we all?
Yeah, yeah. But he wanted everything to be, like you said, absolutely top notch. We shared that. We were both perfectionists, and he liked that about me, and I liked that about him. We knew that whatever we did, we wanted to be the absolute best it could be. How long were you with the Elvis Presley show?
Well, we were friends from that 1964 when I first met him. He came out several times to hear me when I was with his Statesman after that session. In fact, the weirdest thing about it was when I left the Imperials, I was out in California singing. I went back to the Songfellows for a while. And I was singing at a local TV station with the Songfellows, and a chauffeur and a limousine drove up, and Charlie Hodge hopped out and said, Elvis wants to know how come you left the Imperials. He's upset.
Oh, goodness.
I thought that was the weirdest, wildest thing. He would send somebody out in his limousine to find out why I wasn't with the group, and I told him we just had some problems and differences in which direction we wanted our career to go. He said, well, he just wanted to know because he was unhappy that you weren't with him anymore. I said, well, tell him I said hi. And he came out when I was with the Statesman in Long Beach, California. He came out to the show. Saw him several times. He came out to the convention. And the thing that stands out for me in Long Beach when he came out, right around 68, or 69, I guess it was, he asked me if I'd sing a song that he had recorded, that I had recorded. That was a favorite of his that he later recorded, and incidentally, when I heard it, I knew, because he did the exact same arrangement of it that I had done on my album, a song called The Impossible Dream. And he sent Charlie around to ask if I'd sing it for him on the show that night in Long Beach. And I said, yeah, I'll be happy to, and so I did it that night. And after I finished it, he sent Charlie to bring me backstage to say hello. And when I did, that was when he put a TCB around my neck.
Oh, wow.
And gave me a hug and told me this was a token of his appreciation of what my music had meant to him for all these years.
Do you still have it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still have it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, that was, I was in then once I got my TCB, so.
So you were with the Elvis Presley show later on in his life, wasn't you? Or
1973, I joined him. Right after he'd returned from a Aloha from Hawaii special. And I was with him from then on until, I was with him in Voice from 72 to approximately around 75, I guess. 73, excuse me, 73, 74, 75. And then the group, he quit, he left Las Vegas. He quit touring there for a while. He got sick and left Vegas. And so I put a group together back in Nashville and was singing at I remember it was a Holiday Inn. I had a full band, a girl singer, and a whole bit. And I got a call from Red, said Elvis wants you to join him in Las Vegas. How much, would you do it? How much would you charge him and so forth? I said, well, I've got a contract here, but let me see if I can get out of it. So I had a former Miss Tennessee singing with me, and I had a good band, so I talked to the guy. He was very impressed that Elvis would call and want me to come to Vegas, the manager, and so I told him I would deduct my fee and give him a girl singer in the band if he'd let me go.
Mm-hmm.
And so he let me go, and I went on out back and joined him. I think it was around 75, 76 that I went back and joined him, just me. But I asked Red, I said, Red, does he want me to put the group back together? He said, no, he just wants you. So I said, well, okay. So I went back and joined him in 75.
What did you think of the hysteria of an Elvis Presley show? I mean,
I often wondered about that. I remember standing there. There were times when I stood most of the time next to Estelle, the Sweet Inspirations, on stage. And there were times when we literally could not hear each other. We stood right next to each other.
mm-hmm.
There was one time in Pennsylvania when they had women, they made the mistake of having women security guards, and the women literally charged the stage with such gusto that they broke some of the security guards' ribs.
Goodness.
They had injuries such as that. There were times when it was almost frightening. I thought, you had to stop and think, what if these people ever actually broke through and got it? And what would they do if they got to us on stage?
Well, he had real good security, though.
Oh, yeah, he had security, but you need more than he had when there's 10,000 people right in front of the stage.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with 10,000 people when you got maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 bodyguards at the most?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's funny because I was talking to Larry Geller and Ed Bonja and Dick Grobe, and it seems like they all said that Elvis considered the Sahara Tahoe like a vacation. I was told that he didn't really care for Vegas, and it was just because it never stopped, and that they just thought of it as being a vacation, Sahara Tahoe. Is that the way it was, and can you tell me any stories about the Sahara Tahoe that you remember? Or?
I think he considered it more a vacation in Tahoe than he did in Vegas. But I think he was more relaxed in Tahoe for some reason. Like I said, he considered it a vacation. But it was I can't really, it for some reason doesn't stand out in my memory as much as Las Vegas.
Really?
I guess it was because it was a little more laid back and just if anything less hectic. Of course, they were always sold out. But he seemed to be more relaxed on stage and did it whatever he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think they let him, in Vegas they wanted him off the stage for 45 minutes if they could get him off. Most of the time they couldn't because they wanted the people in the casinos gambling, of course, and when they were in there listening to Elvis, they weren't spending money.
Now, Larry remembers did some death threats at the Sahara Tahoe. Do you remember any of those? I know the one, somebody took a crayon and Dick Grobe was telling me about it and put a target on a poster. Do you remember that?
I think that happened before I joined him in '73.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, there were several times that thing happened. But I think that possibly happened before I joined him.
Do you remember any other security problems or any cool things that happened? I mean, he was constantly giving things away. Do you remember any? I'm kind of looking for something that the book is going to be coming out in 2007 in Germany. We're doing it because there's really not a lot about the Sahara Tahoe. Vegas has been done to death.
Right.
So we have a whole bunch of photos that's never been seen before, and so it's going to be a picture book with some information from, well, hopefully, you and Dick Grobe and other people. You're actually the first show person. I've talked to other entourage members, but you're the first show person, so I'm hoping to get some kind of stories on the stage stories, and I'm hoping to talk to Myrna next. So if you can think of anything.
There's not much that took place for me that was memorable in Tahoe. I can tell you one thing that maybe I wouldn't want to be quoted that happened that probably you won't hear about.
Well, I won't write it then if you don't want it, but I wouldn't mind.
I don't mind you writing. Just don't necessarily say it was me that told you.
Okay.
One interesting thing that I remember that happened, but this again was in Las Vegas, but this could be anywhere. But Chuck Berry, not Chuck Berry, but Chubby Checker came up to visit, I believe it was. Came up to the suite. And I'll never forget, on the way out, one of his musicians or something took an ashtray out of the suite. But he was just taking it because he wanted a souvenir.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember that Red, you don't have to even use a name,
right.
Red hit that guy so hard that he literally, his feet left the floor, and they just threw him on the elevator. and that ended that particular session. I really felt sorry for the guy because, but I guess he shouldn't have stolen an ashtray out of the suite.
Yeah, but he didn't need to be punched out either.
No, he didn't need to be.
Right.
But see, the problem was Red and those guys were bored stiff because all they did, it's like having Dobermans that are trained to fight and never letting them fight. They were just looking for a reason to get into a rumble. Mm-hmm. Which I think is why eventually they were, they got almost dangerous.
Well, you said almost exactly word by word what Larry Geller said.
Yeah.
The same thing, that these guys were so macho, they were so high-strung to get into a fight because they were so bored.
They were so bored. They were just looking for a fight. That was something. Well, I didn't realize somebody else saw it exactly the same way I did. Mm-hmm. That's been my own analyzation of the situation, mm-hmm. so to speak. That he confirmed that I was the only one that in some ways I felt they were basically nice guys. I still to this day I mm-hmm. like Red, and but they were, that their job was to fight, but they never got a chance to fight, but so they looked for instances to get into a rumble.
Sure. Well, like Sahara Tahoe is where the big story was, where Red punched out that guy and bloodied him, and Larry goes through the whole story, but Larry wasn't there. He heard from the other guys what had happened, and of course Elvis was sued over it. It never went anywhere because the guy had a record or something, but he also said too that they were gotten rid of because they were such a liability.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were a lawsuit going somewhere to happen.
Yeah. Now, did you see Elvis going? I even hate to talk about it. You must have seen Elvis starting to go downhill. You must have been worried about him. And
that's the sad thing about it was he was in such beautiful shape when he got back from Hawaii. But that was the last time in his career that he ever really got himself into good shape. Mm-hmm. But that was the problem, because Elvis was the type of guy that needed a challenge.
I can't believe you. Did you just get off the phone with Larry Geller or what? I mean, you mirror many of the things that he says.
No, I didn't have any.
That he needed a challenge. He needed a challenge to live.
Yeah.
And there was no more challenges for Elvis Presley. That maybe the movie career could have gotten him going again if, like, the Star is Born thing with Barbra Streisand didn't work out. But you almost mirror what Larry says.
He died of boredom more than anything. Like I said, just like he said, he wanted to do that movie. He wanted to go to Europe. He wanted to do so many things, and we kept playing the same little old towns that treated the Colonel, that rolled the red carpet out for the Colonel, then he'd come back and award these places, and he didn't really. But the thing, I understood what the Colonel's from. What the Colonel was a practical man, and he was going to make the easiest money with the easiest output.
Right.
And he knew we could go to Europe, but then he was going to have the problem of, at the time, Elvis was on so many prescription drugs, and probably some that weren't prescription. Mm-hmm. And that you had that problem crossing, international waters and going over there, and just all kind of problems, and you wouldn't make a doggone bit more than going to Portland, Maine.
Right.
As far as the gross profit was concerned. And
I didn't know that.
The Colonel was a bottom-line man. Mm-hmm. It was just, and so he didn't really pay attention to what Elvis needed, and Elvis needed something. It needed a new toy, something to kick him in the butt and get himself going. So it was sad to watch him. We basically walked. Felton Jarvis and I sat on the plane one time and said, "Lord, if something don't happen, the man's going to die." Of course, we never believed he'd really die, but we both, we could see it.
Mm-hmm. I never knew how young 42 was until I turned 42, and I looked at myself in the mirror. Now, I have a lot of problems. I'm in a wheelchair, and I said, "My gosh, how young he was."
Yeah.
I make best as much as of my life as I can.
Right.
And I looked at myself and said, my God, he was only 42 years old. He could have lost weight, made himself healthy. But it almost sounds like he was so far gone, there's nothing that he really could have done.
Yeah, he just... it was sad to watch, but yeah, I watched him. You know, I did everything, and if you ever notice pictures of me on stage, part of the reason I worked out so hard was to try to motivate him into getting himself in shape.
Now, Sue McCaslin says to me that you had a set of arms on you.
Yeah.
Do you remember Sue?
The name is so familiar, I've racked my brain to see.
She was from California. I've become very good friends with her. She lives in Vegas now. You used to go to her Elvis festivals. And she's the one who told me that I should try to look you up. You know, it's so hard to get some of your guys' phone numbers. If you don't have a website, then I'm kind of lost.
Right. Okay, now I know who you're talking about. Tell her I said hello. Yeah, I did. I had to, I used to do 100 push-ups before I'd go on stage, and I'd do dips in the restroom, and I used to joke because I said, boy, it's hard to get any attention when you're on the stage without.
Oh, I bet you no one gave you a look, I'm sorry to say.
Well, I did have one girl that said, I saw you before I saw him.
Oh, really?
I was always proud of that, yeah.
Did, Shaun, why'd you change your name from Sherrill to Shaun? And I'm asking you not only for me, but Sue always wondered.
It was because as a youngster, going through singing and going through hotels and things, even as a kid, it was kind of like being a boy named Sue.
Right.
Because the other kids thought it was a girl's name. They made fun of it. And when I got older, I got often paged in the lobbies of hotels as Miss Sherrill Nielsen. So one day I decided, if I had named me, I would have named myself Shaun, because I like that name better. So I was in Wichita, Kansas, performing, and I said, well, I'm going to take, and I signed a contract with RCA at the time. In fact, I had a #1 record in Wichita, Kansas, back in the 60s. And so I just changed it because I liked the name better. And since I had a record contract, I thought, well, I'm starting a career here. Why not go with the name I like? But see, it started out, when I first changed it, I called it Shaun Neil, but it was spelled S-E-A-N, and then the last name was Neil, N-E-A-L. In fact, on my first single for RCA, that's the name on it, Shaun Neil. But the country DJs were calling it obscene. So I said, let's change that to S-H-A-U-N, and then I eventually went back to the Nielsen. But that's how it happened.
What did you think of Colonel Parker? I won't hold you to anything.
Oh, that's right. It don't matter. He's gone anyhow. It's not. And it's just that Mama used to tell me if you can't say something good about somebody, don't say nothing. So I got to think it over. I think the Colonel, in my estimation, my personal opinion, the Colonel made Elvis in the beginning and destroyed him in the end.
Really?
That's my personal opinion. And I don't think he did it on purpose. I just think, I do believe that the Colonel was responsible for Elvis' success, but I think he was also partly responsible for his demise because he wouldn't let him do his movies and things that would have motivated him to get himself into shape.
How about Vernon?
Vernon? Vernon was I liked Vernon fine, but Vernon was strange. I mean, they were all the time, when we had to go up and beg for our money to Graceland every time we were supposed to get paid, we had literally to drive over to Memphis and beg to get our check.
And why is that? Vernon was tight.
Vernon would, in fact, there was times they were threatening to turn the water and the lights off because Vernon didn't want to pay any bills. He was in charge of the money.
And what would
he was just always afraid they were going to be broke, just like they were when Elvis, when they lived in the projects, I guess. That's the thing I could ever figure out. I think Vernon was a nice man. I don't think he was a very smart man. That was my personal observation.
How about Priscilla?
Priscilla told me, last time I talked to Priscilla, was at we reviewed Elvis in the Graceland. They had the musicians come over. And as I went through, I conveyed my condolences. She told me, she said, I just want you to know, we used to listen to your records by the album, and you brought them a lot of happiness. And I said, well, thank you. That was very kind of her. That's the last time I've ever had a chance to talk with her.
Oh, so you were at the funeral?
Well, actually, not the funeral. They just there were some of us that weren't invited to the funeral. we were invited to come down there on the day before and view him laying there in Graceland.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I was there. I didn't go to the funeral, which I was happy because it was such a, as you know, it was chaotic funeral. But we viewed his body in the casket there at Graceland on the day before before the funeral.
It must. They say he looked. Larry said he looked beautiful. Absolutely the best he looked in. You know, he looked beautiful.
Well, he looked good. I mean, but you could, he still looked swollen and bigger than he should have been.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't like he looked on the '68 comeback special. Let's
Right.
put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, is there